He was Auburn's future. Now his future is handing Auburn L's. Walker White joins Locked On Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Bears fans. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, brought to you by FanDuel and part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Cam Stewart of ESPN Central Texas and the Cam Show on YouTube. But you're here for this guy, Walker White, the newest quarterback added to the Baylor Bears, coming in from Auburn through the transfer portal. Walker, I know it feels like a long ways away from hot weather in Waco, Texas in August when you guys kicked things off with the snow outside. But how has this last month been for you in this whole process?
It's been crazy. There's been a lot. This whole transfer world is pretty chaotic. I think the NCAA is still trying to figure out how to regulate it, but it is a world that I never anticipated myself being in, nor did I want to be in it, but I found myself in it, and I'm obviously extremely happy that Baylor was one of the schools that called, and excited to get down to Waco. And you were talking about it's going to be a little bit before we kick off. I'm actually watching the snow fall right to my left here in Arkansas, but no, it's been crazy. But I've just really tried to trust the Lord and make Him my peace. So.
And of course, it's an announcement that excited a ton of Baylor fans. And I know there was some surprise in the aspect of you going to Baylor as such a high recruit. I think people are still getting used to that. But a lot of the headlines came from your time at Auburn and leaving Auburn after one season. So let's take a chance to look at that a little bit. First off, what was the background for you leaving Auburn? You said it was kind of a big decision to enter into the portal, not something you were planning on the whole season, obviously. So what went into that decision to leave the Plains?
Yeah, there's a lot of trying to figure out how to word this. There's a lot of false accusations out there of why I left. One of them being that I was afraid to compete. And personally, you could ask any of the coaches or players there at Auburn. Everyone knows that's not true. That's the last thing that's furthest from the truth. And so for me, leaving Auburn, I understand how important experience is. My ultimate goal is to get to the NFL. And I know that I need to get on the field, get experience, get film out there. And so when they bring Jackson Arnold on, who's a guy that has multiple years left of availability, that was kind of alarming to me, especially because before I was ever at Auburn, when I was coming out of high school, Coach Freeze, my dad, and I had a conversation, and we asked him the question, what's the timeline for you in your mind of, when should I be the guy? And Coach Freeze said and told me and my dad that if Walker's not the guy by year 2, then he probably never will be, unless, injury and he gets his chance. And so with me going into my year 2 and they bring a guy who has multiple years in and he's getting paid starter money, that communicated to me everything I needed to know. And so I just had to find a place that could give me that opportunity to get on the field this year or the next, and just get me rolling and get me on the field and get some film out there. And Baylor was an easy choice because they were in my top 3 coming out of high school, and I love Coach Aranda. Got to spend and have some conversations with Coach Spavital. And I'm also very excited to work with Sawyer Robinson, Nate Bennett, a couple of those guys that I know of. I think it's going to be a really good room, and I'm excited to make those relationships.
And going back to that conversation that you had with Hugh Freeze, because you talk about Jackson Arnold comes in, probably the starter incumbent, like you said, SEC starter with years of eligibility left. And then they bring in Deuce Knight, who is one of the highest rated recruits out of high school that they've ever had. Same story that it was with you. And so that he's probably had that discussion with Hugh Freeze as well. Is there some aspect of that in there? Again, not in terms of running away from the grind, but of like, you know what, the same thing he said to me is the same thing he said to Deuce Knight.
Yeah, it's a good question. In my decision of leaving Auburn, Deuce Knight was not a factor. I think he's a great player. I'm sure we would have been great friends and had a great relationship. I'm sure he's going to do great wherever he goes. But that was not a factor that confirmed or increased my decision at all. It was solely on who they brought in and what situation that put me in.
And speaking of Hugh Freeze again, because there's been all kinds of narratives from fans talking about the quarterbacks that have come through Auburn and have come through Hugh Freeze. And then they kind of take and run with something that you said right as you were committing to Baylor and talking about, getting to a place that has quarterback development and more of a stability to it. And a lot of people took that as a shot at Hugh Freeze. In fact, full disclosure, Walker, I was like, oh man, is he taking a shot at Hugh Freeze out the door? And I actually had Zach Blackerby of Locked On Auburn on. He said that's probably not the case. So was that a shot at Hugh Freeze coming out the door?
Yeah, that couldn't be further from the truth. I actually texted Coach Freeze, Coach Kent Austin, my quarterback coach, and then also Jesse Stone, who is our assistant quarterback coach, and addressed what was being spread and just had to clear some things up, and they understood. But the quote that was out there, I didn't even say really word for word what they were quoting me on. So I'm not sure exactly where they got that. I was interviewed by Steve Wiltfong. And the question was, all right, Walker, of the schools that were recruiting you in the transfer portal, why Baylor? And so I answered the question in relation to, of me being in the transfer portal and the schools that were recruiting me, why I chose Baylor. And I answered it like this. I said, I'm very excited to work with Coach Spavital. I think it's a great opportunity. I'm excited for the quarterback development there. Never once was it about Coach Freeze and what he can do. Everyone has seen what he can do with quarterbacks. He can put up great numbers. He's put Malik Willis in the NFL. Bo Wallace had a great career. We know what he can do. He's good with quarterbacks. So never once was it a shot at Auburn / Coach Freeze. I was answering the question within what was asked in the context. And so I think a lot of people just took that the wrong way for sure.
It is worth noting the name Hugh Freeze is not mentioned in the quote at all, but a lot of people ran with it. Yeah. And you're not trying to just get closer to your sick mother. Is that correct? I've seen that around. It seemed like the most outlandish. It's been on the message boards and on social media. A chance here.
I don't know where people came up with that narrative, but it frustrates me because first off, it makes my mom mad. She's like, "Wait, y'all are acting like I'm on my deathbed over here." She's doing great. She's actually working out right now. So I don't know where that came from. And in other words, just to put it like this, the other school I was thinking about was California. So take that as you will.
It's not very close.
So it wasn't really the leading factor / any factor at all.
And let's close the book on the Auburn thing here before we talk Baylor, because I've seen this a lot too, and it's not just for you, but a lot of players that go out of the port or go into the portal and away from a school, and their fans get very offended by this. And I don't understand it, but you've seen them. People write these soliloquies, man. They write paragraphs about, how thankful they were to be at this place and how they love the fans and everything. And it doesn't mean much when you're going out the door to see that, why I left Auburn, how much I love it. And now you see fans being like, why didn't he do that? He must have hated it. So Walker, why didn't you go in your notes app or maybe get a friend with graphic design help and put out like 3 paragraphs on why you were doing this?
That's so funny. So I had a conversation with my dad once, and we were talking about all these guys. Every time they enter the transfer portal, they write these love notes to the fan base, and they tag them with Bible verses, and that's fine if that's you. But my dad advised me. He said, Walker, if you ever get into the transfer portal, just go into the transfer portal. Don't write this, like you said, soliloquy and tag it with Bible verses and tell, explain everything of, why this happened and how thankful you are. Yes, I'm so thankful for the Auburn University and the Auburn family. They were awesome to me. And I feel like I did or tried to do as much as I possibly could for them in recruiting and giving my best and to the football team, to the guys, and serving. I'm so thankful for the opportunities Auburn brought me, and I will forever hold what I learned there forever in my life. But I just didn't feel the need to, especially being there 1 year. Yes, I was thankful, but I didn't feel the need to just, write some long story and some thank you letter. I just kind of thought it'd be better for me to just, kind of stay underneath, not draw too much attention to myself, but put my name in there and find a school for me. I didn't feel like it was that big of a deal. But obviously my dad and I were wrong, because there's been a few that have crucified me and saying, oh, he must have hated this place. And that's couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah. Some fans are pretty shocked you haven't been arrested yet. But once this roads clear up, I'm sure the police will be paying you a visit for not having that out there. Anyway, Walker White is now a Baylor Bear. Let's talk about that transition and what he's looking forward to at Baylor coming up next on Locked On Baylor. Has Rocket Money helped you find any subscriptions that you forgot about or that you're paying for twice? Definitely happened to me. Definitely happened for me. And I don't have the money to spare. A few subscriptions that I was paying for after the free trial, didn't want to do that. Rocket Money was like having my own personal finance assistant. It's a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, helps you lower those bills so that you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, just like we need it. Everything's in so many different places now. Not Rocket Money. Okay, it's got over 5 million users, saved a total of 500 million in canceled subscriptions, which can save you up to $740 a year with the premium features. For me, that subscription tracker saved me a ton. And just having it all in one place, seeing what my spending habits were, it allowed me to budget differently. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. One more time, rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Now let's get back to Walker. So Walker, the Auburn stuff is in the past. While grateful, it is in the past. And now in a couple days here, you're going to be heading out to Waco to meet up with your new team, the Baylor Bears. And it's one that you have some history with, obviously a big recruitment out of high school. And now after a year at Auburn, that's where you're at. So let's keep it simple. Why Baylor?
It's crazy how full circle this came, but Baylor always sparked my interest from the start. They were in my top 3 coming out of high school. And once I knew I was going to the transfer portal, and my agents contacted me and they said, hey, like Baylor might be interested. So I was really excited about that because I already know I liked the campus. I love Coach Aranda. He's an awesome guy. I love his core values, what he believes for. And then I went and took a visit to Baylor, got to spend the day with Coach Spavital, and I got to see the new facilities and everything. But mainly I loved my time with Coach Spav and Coach Holcomb, who's the assistant quarterback coach. And so I'm really excited about spending time with those guys. I know a guy who played for Coach Spavital. His name's Lane Hatcher. He played for him at Texas State. Had to do a little background check. I called Lane Hatcher. I was like, all right, give me the rundown on Spav. And he was saying, man, I love Spav. He's a guy that you could spend hours a day in the film room with, and he'll keep it straight with you. And, I took what I had from that conversation and went and visited Baylor, and I got everything that I needed. And so after that, it was pretty easy. After my visit there, it was pretty easy to know that Baylor was the place that I wanted to go.
And did you talk about it becoming full circle because of how much you liked it out of high school? Did you expect that Baylor would come calling once you put your name in the portal? You're looking at obviously a good offense and a quarterback that's coming back. Did you expect Baylor to be in that running?
I did not, especially with, the season they had been having. They had a great season with Sawyer. Um, I honestly don't know what I really expected going into the transfer portal, but I was at least confident enough to go in there knowing that there would be a few programs that would want me, even if they were a little bit lower level. I mean, I was fine with that. I just wanted to find a place that I could play.
And going back to Spavital a little bit before we talk Sawyer, in terms of you talk about the way he coaches, but in terms of the offense, I mean, this was such a renaissance this year, especially in the second half of the season with the 6-game winning streak and, putting up 40 plus points a game in the back half of that schedule. It just transformed into kind of the Baylor that we saw probably when you were growing up, 10 years ago, that was putting up crazy numbers. And so how much, and you see that the quarterbacks that Spavital has developed over the years, I mean, Heisman Trophy winners, NFL guys, #1 picks, how attractive is his coaching style and this offense to a quarterback like you?
It's very attractive. Me and my dad and a couple of my other family members watched the Baylor LSU game, which, by the way, I mean, that could have been an easy W for Baylor. Everyone knows that.
Everyone with a brain knows that. You're right. You're right.
But there's
all knowers.
I was just watching the offense, and it's very quarterback friendly. Coach Spav is not afraid to rip it. He gives the quarterback a lot of freedom, gives the receivers a lot of freedom to be athletes and do what they do best. Coach Spav, his coaching style, it seems like he really makes his quarterbacks confident. Whether it's hyping them up on the field or just playing with swag. If you watch the Baylor team as a whole, but offense especially, you'll see a bunch of guys who play with grit and they're having fun. They're having a ball and they're playing with swag, and that's dangerous. Even if your athletes aren't always as good as the team that you're playing, if you play with swag, you can hang up some points up there. So that was really exciting to me. And Coach Spav, in my time with him, was telling me how much he emphasizes playing with confidence and swag. And so I love that. That stuff is contagious to me. And so just watching first the Baylor LSU game, because that was the first game I actually paid attention to when watching Baylor. Very eye-opening, and me and my dad were just extremely excited after that game because we know that that's an offense that I believe I can run well.
And they couldn't stop the passing attack all day long. There were other issues, but they could not stop the Bears and Sawyer Robertson in particular. Mm-hmm. Sawyer comes back after having a breakout season, and I think that led to a lot of, scratching of heads of, apparently this guy's running from the grind at Auburn, but here he is with a big-time returning starter, probably the best returning starting quarterback in the Big 12, and Sawyer Robertson ahead of him on the depth chart. So what are your thoughts on that to, compete with Sawyer and learn under Sawyer here in 2025?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think my social IQ is enough to compete with somebody and still hold a great relationship with them. I met Sawyer when I went on a visit to Baylor, and seems like an awesome dude. Me and the quarterback room at Auburn, we all had, those are my best friends for life. We all had a great relationship, but at the same time, we were also competing for one another's job. So, I mean, I think that's kind of the narrative that I'm walking into. Yes, he's a veteran guy, 5th-year dude. My job personally, I'm going to go in there and compete. And if it ends up making and pushing him to be better, let's go. He's getting better. I'm learning from a veteran, and we'll just see where it goes from there. But I am excited to compete and see how it is, and most importantly, make those relationships, because I can tell those guys are pretty cool.
And certainly in the quarterback room, from Sawyer to Walker, it's going to be a bright future for the Baylor Bears. Let's talk about the vision and where Walker sees this program going. That's next on Locked On Baylor. Walker White joining the show, joining the Bears out of the transfer portal. And you talked a little bit in that last segment about, your first time around and having Baylor in your top 3 at the end of the race. And it was one of those deals where us as Baylor fans, we're like, I think they've probably come in too late for Walker. Auburn and Clemson were certainly pushing hard for you in your senior year at Little Rock Christian, junior year at Little Rock Christian, and the outlook is a lot different from Baylor now to then. Tell me about what that initial recruitment was like and how much Baylor was truly in the running for this back in the winter of 22.
So coming out of high school, the offensive coordinator here at the time was Jeff Grimes. Loved Coach Grimes. Great guy. He's actually the offensive coordinator at Wisconsin now, but him and Coach Sean Bell were the guys that were recruiting me, and they just seemed – me and my quarterback coach from high school, who I admire and trust his opinion every day of my life, we were both extremely high on Coach Grimes and Coach Bell. They were awesome dudes. They were so genuine. I loved their offense. There was some pro style in there. And when I went and watched the Baylor TCU game a couple years ago, when TCU made that last second field goal, that was their championship year. That's tough. But it was I went and watched that game, and I just saw how explosive the offense was. And so I was like, man, this place is awesome. And so that was definitely appealing, just watching the offense, watching the crowd. Actually, their atmosphere is so awesome. Loved being there on game day. But I think coming out of high school, my I guess ego was a little bit too big. Maybe I was in the mindset of, I was born into SEC country, so I wanted to stay there.
Yep.
And so I think that was a little bit of I think that was definitely a factor going into college. I also know that the Lord was pulling me to Auburn. The second I got there, I just told myself that this is the place I need to be. And I wouldn't have changed anything. I think I was at Auburn for a purpose. I think I learned what I needed to learn there. I found the connections I needed to connect there. And now it was just time for me to move on. And now I'm ready to buckle down and play and work. And that's simply what I'm coming in to Baylor to do, is work. I'm coming in definitely with a humble spirit, because I know that this Baylor team from this past year had tons of success, and so I'm just going to try to figure out, okay, what's this team like? How do they act? How do they roll? And just try to find my part in it. And so it's going to be interesting, but I'm definitely extremely excited.
You had a part in there that makes me expedite one of these questions, because we hear about it all the time, man. The SEC, the SEC, the SEC. And you mentioned it. You grew up in it. You grew up in Arkansas. And of course you had your SEC suitors out of high school as well. This is a two-part question here. I want your opinion first on the SEC bias that's just throughout college football and how those programs are viewed throughout the country. And then two, because I did a segment on this on yesterday's show about how the Big 12 is actually doing really well in terms of getting guys in the portal, especially from the SEC Big 10, which everyone perceives as being so much better than the football that we play in the Big 12. So you, as someone going through the portal from the SEC to the Big 12, is that something you're even looking at? I mean, Cal's in the ACC, but we think lowly of them too in SEC and Big 10 country. So is that something you think of, the conference, the patch, or are you just like, hey man, this is the program, this is the coach, and it is still in the Power Four?
Absolutely. I'm with you on that last part that you said. It's the program, it's the coach, and it's still really good football. Coming from SEC, which we actually see now in the playoffs, the SEC ain't all that this year, mate. I mean, it's been with the new transfer portal stuff and then the 12-man. And I think that's what NIL did to the game of football. It made it to where not only SEC teams are always competing. It's now these other teams can bring in recruits that probably wouldn't have gone to them in the first place, which I don't agree with. I think you commit to somewhere because of the coach and where you believe you will fit in as a program. But that's what the name of the game is right now. And so my brother actually made a comment the other day. He said, SEC is not the power, it's not different anymore. And I was like, come on, dude. Yeah, it is. But it's definitely, it's changing. But, going from SEC to Big 12 and going in from the portal, it's definitely different. And I didn't think of it while I was in the portal. Never did my mind ever say, all right, well, what conference are they in? I never even thought about that. I was just so eager and ready to find a place that I know I can have an opportunity and a chance to go develop, go become better, and get film. And Baylor was one of the ones that just excited me the most about that. So.
And in terms of that, you mentioned the NIL in there, and that becomes like the big thing. Oh, this kid's not going there because they don't have any NIL, or of course he's going to go there because they're going to give him a big paycheck. And you're someone who, I mean, everyone's making money now, especially at the quarterback position. You come in and you said it earlier in this show, you're looking for a chance, you're looking for more playing time. And you're obviously very in touch with your faith. I think that was probably a big part of your decision with Baylor and the coaches' relationships. So how much of that is even talked about when you're taking a visit to Waco, meeting with the coaches? Like, how much is NIL even talked about? Are you guys even talking figures, or how does that go?
Personally, talking money with coaches specifically grosses me out. It's a conversation. My agents, Peter Webb and David Morris, have been so helpful because I don't know this world. I don't know this market, what numbers should be what. And so I just have completely trusted them. They've had my best interest the whole time. And so I never had one conversation to a coach, to a donor. It's like, hey, like, I want this. It's more like, all right, agents, you can go handle that because I don't know how to work that, nor is that really at the top of my priority. But they make it, their priority because it's their job. But at the end of the day, it has become a part of college football. It's no longer you're committing to a program. Now there's just kids committing to money, which is why you see so many transfer portal guys, which is why I think teams like Clemson and Notre Dame are doing such a good job of regulating this because they're not taking too many transfer portal guys. They're bringing high school guys. They're developing and they're bringing them up to be the kids and the players that they know that they recruited them to be. And so they're still trying to stick to, the old ways. And I love that. But as someone who is at a school, being Auburn, who's not really staying in that world, they're heavy on the portal, which is fine. Like, it's there for you to use it. It's just a little bit easier to leave whenever the school that you're at is doing that. And so, I mean,
and I'm sure it's got to be comforting to some degree that, you talked about, you don't like talking about that, and Baylor doesn't really like talking about that publicly.
Yeah.
It's something that they fell behind in, that they need to be in, right? We talk about that, but I imagine that would have helped in your decision as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's something you have to adapt to. And if you don't adapt to this world of now, it's a business. It's really every player that is in college football, it's your first job is what it is. It's a very good paying first job as a teenager. And so if you don't adapt to it, you're going to be left in the dust and you're going to be forgotten about. I've seen it with a couple guys that I know I'm thinking of right now. They've waited too long and they didn't jump on the opportunity that they could have had, and they're being forgotten about. Your value has lowered because you didn't get film out there. And that's another reason why there was an urgency to leave, because you have to get film out there or your value decreases. And there's just so many factors, but you have to adapt to it. And as sucky as it can be, because it can be, but I mean, first world problems, like, such a horrible problem to have.
Yeah.
It's you have to adjust to it.
It's part of the game.
Yeah, it's part
of the game. And looking at your future here at Baylor, we mentioned it, but the outlook for this program is way different from when you were being recruited out of high school. That was a year after the Sugar Bowl victory. And then in 22, they falter at the end. They go to 6-7, and then it bottoms out in 23 at 3-9. And we've already talked about the success they've had this year. And with some key guys coming back, Dave Aranda, that seat is a lot cooler than it was at the beginning of the season, and Jake Spavital doing his thing on offense. What do you see from Dave Aranda's vision for the short term for this program and what this program can achieve?
Yeah, so in my visit at Baylor, me and my dad and my brother had a sit down meeting with Coach Aranda, and he was saying that when he was at LSU, all his focus was over here on football. He was all football. And then whenever he got to Baylor, he was like, oh my gosh, that's very stressful. Let's make it all like community and all person oriented. And he was like, oh, well, now we're losing the aspect of having that dog in football. So now we've had to balance that out and bring some dogs in and just focus more on football now. And so I think Coach Aranda has found his balance of where he is comfortable, where he wants to live, in the realm of community plus football. And so he told me, he said, we need to bring dogs in. We need to bring guys who are gritty, all football, and are here to just ball. And so hearing him, that really excited me. I know they're working on a couple more guys in specific position groups that they're wanting to bring in, and I'm trying to help out with that. I know there's also some spots that they're waiting to see if are going to open, especially at the receiver position, or if that's going to stay constant, which I already know that they have some extremely good athletes at the receiver position. I know their running backs are so talented, super gifted, especially that freshman guy.
Yep. Bryson Washington. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And so I know that he's just focusing on bringing dogs in, and that makes me excited because, if you bring that with good culture, with swag and confidence, it's dangerous. It doesn't matter who you're playing against.
So you're a dog then?
I'm a dog.
Let's go. Walker, one last thing before we get you out of here. This is the first time you've been able to kind of address the Baylor fans. I know so many of them, including myself, very excited that you're coming in as such a high ceiling quarterback and finally having some stability at that position for the short-term future. So if there's anything you would like to say to the Baylor fans, what would it be?
I know there was a little skepticism whenever they saw that I was coming because they were like, oh, well, Sawyer Robinson had a great year. And he did. I watched it. I think the one thing I would want to say to the Baylor fans, I think something that is different going into Baylor than me going to Auburn is the Auburn people got to see me recruit for Auburn. I was doing all this stuff, and the Auburn people got to know me. I want the Baylor people to get to know me, whether it's through community. I know Coach Rand is going to set us up to do that. What I do know is that ever since I committed to Baylor, I've been itching to get on campus and get to work. I've texted Coach Spavital multiple times on the offense, and I've been studying the playbook. And if it's not this year that you are going to see me, I'm trying to be careful with my words. I'm just excited to be a Baylor Bear. I know many people who have been Baylor Bears, and I'm just excited to be a part of it. And I'm going to bring my best.
And I just do want to make sure you know who the season opener is in 25 and 26.
Yeah, it's against Auburn. And
just wanted to make sure.
And I'm planning on giving Auburn their first loss of the season, whether it's me helping the team prepare for that or playing in it myself. So we'll see.
Well, we're looking forward to it. The Baylor community, get used to this guy, Walker White. You're going to be seeing a lot of them in green and gold down the line. Walker, thanks so much for joining. It's awesome to hear from you. Like you said, people have been itching to hear from you, and I know you've been itching to talk to the Baylor fans. So we really appreciate your time.
Sure. Well, thank you, Cam. This was awesome.
Walker White, Cam Stewart doing Locked On Baylor. You guys know the drill. Be sure to like and subscribe. A lot of you that watch every day still are not subscribed. Walker White was number 4 at one point. He wants to get to 4,000 subscribers, and we're getting pretty close to that. So help us out. Thank you for making it your first listen today and every day, and we'll see you tomorrow on Locked On Baylor.